Let's start our study for Abhidhamma, fundamental knowledge of Abhidhamma, lesson 10 by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Okay, in this lesson, we are going to study about the 18 rootless consciousness for part 2. In this lesson, I intend to discuss more information about the rootless consciousness. In the lesson 8, we had already studied the enumeration of the rootless consciousness and some information related to the rootless consciousness. So in this lesson, we will continue about the 18 rootless consciousness and some topics. Okay, in this lesson, we will talk about the consciousness in the rootless consciousness, the category of consciousness. There are 3 groups in the rootless consciousness, ahituka, chitta. So among these 3 groups, the former 2 groups are vipaka consciousness. So they are called abhyagata. So I will explain more about that related to the abhyagata. And in the classification, the akusala vipaka, the first group is akusala vipaka, and second group is ahituka kusala vipaka. Then the third group is ahituka kiriya. So according to the name, 2 groups are named by the word ahituka. So I will explain more about that, why they are given by the name of ahituka. Then we can find the rootless wholesome resultants are 8 in number, while unwholesome resultants are just 7. So what made the difference? And about the hasitopara consciousness. And also among the 18 rootless consciousness, we can find some are accompanied by equanimity, some are accompanied by painful feeling and pleasurable feeling, and also joy. So we will talk about the feeling, accompanying feeling. So okay, let's continue our study here. And before we continue that, I like to say the information to compare with the rootless consciousness with the consciousness with roots. So rootless consciousness are called ahituka, and consciousness with roots are called sahituka. So ahituka and sahituka. So ahituka, there is no roots. That roots make the stability of the consciousness. So the consciousness without roots, rootless consciousness, are weaker than those consciousness with roots, sahituka. So ahituka consciousness are weaker than the sahituka consciousness. You can read that about in the comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma in page number 40. Then when we divide it into 3 groups, the first group is unwholesome resultant consciousness. So there, in the name, you see the unwholesome, akusala in Pali. So in Pali, the name is akusala vipaka chitta. The 7 consciousness are named as akusala vipaka chitta. So it can be easily understood, misunderstood as unwholesome. But actually, it is not unwholesome. It is the resultant of unwholesome. These 7 types of consciousness are resultants of unwholesome. So here in the name, the important word is vipaka, resultant in English. So the first group of 7 consciousness are resultant consciousness. If we classify according to the nature or the kinds of consciousness called jati in Pali. So according to the jati, some consciousness are identified as unwholesome akusala, and some consciousness are identified as wholesome kusala, and some consciousness are identified as vipaka resultants, and some consciousness are identified as functional kiriya. So in this case, the first group, 7 consciousness are unwholesome resultant. So they are resultant in the nature. They are not unwholesome. But the resultant produced by what? The question comes. So to give the answer, the resultant produced by unwholesome. So the name is given as the akusala vipaka, and it is translated as unwholesome resultant. So the past group is resultant. So related to the resultants, so they are not chemically unwholesome, but they are called chemically indeterminate in other way. So according to the classification of the Tikamatika, so in Tikamatika, the ultimate realities are divided into 3 groups. So the past Tikamatika say Kusalatika. In the Kusalatika, the Buddha classified ultimate reality into 3. Kusala Dhamma, wholesome Dhamma, Akusala Dhamma, unwholesome Dhamma, and Abhyagata Dhamma. So Kusala Dhamma is wholesome, Akusala Dhamma is unwholesome, and Abhyagata Dhamma is the rest nature, the other nature except wholesome and unwholesome are called the Abhyagata. So in that classification, the resultant category and functional categories are collectively called Abhyagata. So in this case, because 7 consciousness of unwholesome resultants are included under the name of Abhyagata, under the category of Abhyagata, which is translated as chemically indeterminate. So it is clear it is not unwholesome. It is just the resultants produced by unwholesome karma. In the same way, the second group of 8 consciousness, 8 wholesome resultant consciousness are the result of wholesome karma, and it is produced by the wholesome karma. Also, chemically indeterminate abhyagata. So the vipaka are under the classification of abhyagata. Okay, so now we understand the vipaka and kriya are abhyagata. That's why the first group, unwholesome resultant, and the second group, wholesome resultants, are included under the category of chemically indeterminate abhyagata. So, okay, let's continue about the word ahetuka. So, when the unwholesome resultant consciousness are given the name just the akusala vipaka, unwholesome resultant, then the wholesome resultant consciousness are given the name with the word ahetuka. So by the word ahetuka, so ahetuka kusala vipaka. So in this case, we have to understand there are 2 types of wholesome resultant consciousness. So wholesome resultant consciousness can be in 2 types. So one is rootless, unwholesome resultant consciousness. So there's no roots for that resultant consciousness, but it is produced by the wholesome karma. And the other types is sahetuka kusala vipaka. So the resultant consciousness produced by the wholesome karma, but it has the roots. So the roots can be say the beautiful roots. So non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. So the resultant consciousness with the beautiful roots are called the Sahetuka Kusala Vipaka. We can give the name in that way. So there are two types of Kusala Vipaka. One is Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka, and the other is Sahetuka Kusala Vipaka. That is why, in order to distinguish the wholesome resultant consciousness from wholesome resultant consciousness of rootless, from the wholesome resultant consciousness with roots. So Ahetuka from to identify Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka from Sahetuka Kusala Vipaka, the word Ahetuka is inserted in this case, in this name. So in this case, you can have the question, what about the Akusala Vipaka? Why the word Ahetuka is not inserted in front of the Akusala Vipaka 7? So in this case, we have to understand the word modifier. So the modifier is useful only when it is used to differentiate one from the others. So in this case, Akusala Vipaka, unwholesome resultant consciousness, can be found only in the rootless consciousness. So there is no Akusala Vipaka, unwholesome resultant consciousness in Sahetuka consciousness. So that's why only one category, not necessary to identify from the others. That's why the word Ahetuka is not inserted in front of the Akusala Vipaka group. So if we put the Ahetuka Akusala Vipaka also, it is correct. But the word Ahetuka will be extra one. It is not necessary. That is why they are not called Ahetuka Akusala Vipaka, and they are just called Akusala Vipaka. And for the Kusala Vipaka, in order to distinguish from the Sahetuka Kusala Vipaka, here the name is given Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka. Okay, in the same way, the Ahetuka Kriya also, there are the functional consciousness in the Sahetuka category. So in order to distinguish the rootless functional consciousness from the functional consciousness with roots, the word Ahetuka is inserted. So Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka and Ahetuka Kriya Chitta, they are called in that way. Then, okay, let's continue about the number. So Akusala Vipaka, unwholesome resultant consciousness are just 7, but Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka are 8. So there is extra 1 in the Kusala Vipaka, wholesome resultant consciousness. So that is the investigation consciousness. When the investigation consciousness in Akusala Vipaka, unwholesome resultant consciousness, is only 1. But the wholesome resultant consciousness, in the wholesome resultant consciousness, Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka, there are 2 kinds of investigating consciousness. So one is accompanied by neutral feeling, and the other is accompanied by joy. So one is Ubeka Sahagata and the other is Somanasa Sahagata. So when the investigation consciousness in unwholesome resultant consciousness is one, it is only the consciousness, investigating consciousness accompanied by neutral feeling, only one type. But in, in the wholesome resultant consciousness, there are two investigating consciousness. It is clear if you check in the table. So there are two types of investigating consciousness in the Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka. So one is Ubeka Sahagata, the other is Somnasa Sahagata. Okay, let's see why the investigating consciousness in the wholesome resultant consciousness is different according to the accompanying. So the difference is described as the according to the objects it is taken. So the consciousness arises due to the object. So without the object, the consciousness cannot arise. So when the consciousness of investigating consciousness arises in the Kusala Ahetuka Kusala Vipaka, there can be two category of objects. One is moderately desirable objects, and because the investigation consciousness is produced by the wholesome karma, that the objects must be the desirable. And when the desirable object is in the level of moderate, so ordinary level, or moderately desirable or ordinary desirable objects, at that time the feeling accompanying feeling is neutral feeling, because it is just the ordinary. And when the object is especially desirable, the accompanying feeling must be joy, somanasa. So this difference comes from the level of the qualification of the objects. So here, especially desirable object means like the Buddha image of the rays of the Buddha, of the appearance of the Buddha and Arhat is so very desirable, especially desirable. And the normal appearance of the monks or something beautiful, it is moderately desirable. And for the ear consciousness, it is the Buddha is wise. So when the Buddha preach, if the audience listen to the Buddha is wise, it is especially desirable objects. So the ordinary desirable object, just the beautiful sound or something, that is, they are the ordinary desirable object. Depends on the qualification of the objects, the accompanying feeling of the investigating consciousness can be different in wholesome resultant consciousness. That is why the investigating consciousness are twofold in the wholesome resultant consciousness. So it become 8 because the investigating consciousness in the akusala vipaka and wholesome resultant consciousness is only one type, is accompanied by neutral feeling. Okay, so now we understand what make the difference akusala vipaka and ahetuka kusala vipaka in number. Then, okay, let's continue about the Hasitupada. Hasitupada is translated as the smile producing consciousness. So when it arises, it produces the smile. But it's peculiar to Arahat, is private for Arahat. That Hasitobara consciousness can arise only in the process of Arahat, including Buddha and Pachika Buddha, because the Arahat refers to Buddha, Pachika Buddha, and Arahat. So when the Hasitobara arises, it performs the function of smiling. So the Arahat smile about the sensual sphere phenomena, so about the Dhamma, or like this. They regarding that, when they smile, we can understand the Hasidobara is arising in their mind. So in the Sutta, you can find the Venerable Sariputta come down, and Venerable Moggallana come down from the Kichakuta, and when he sees is the Vedas in different forms, so he smiled. In that case, the Hasidobara arise. And also another types of consciousness that can be the cause of the smile in Arahat, and also the other consciousness that produce the smile of the ordinary person and the trainees. We will study about that in the chapter 6, in Rupa chapter. Okay, so in this case, we understand about the Hasitobara. It produces the smile and only arise only in the mental process of Arahat. It's not related to the ordinary person and trainees. Okay, so for the last part about the accompanying feeling, we have to talk about a lot. So here in this scale, in the lesson 8 and lesson 9, also we already discussed about the arising of the different types of consciousness, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness element, like this. So in the lesson 9, I have already shared the cognitive process, 5-dot cognitive process and mind-dot cognitive process already. So here I will talk about how the eye consciousness arises. So here, visible object, there must be visible object, and there must be eye sensitivity. So coming together, visible object and eye sensitivity into the present time. So come to appear at present, both of the visible object and eye sensitivity at the same time. So there must be contact of the visible object and eye sensitivity. So when we see something, the object and the eye sensitivity, there is a contact. So due to the context of visible object and eye sensitivity, eye consciousness arise. The process is already mentioned in lesson 9. Here, the essential conditions are the objects and here sensitivity. So to arise, in order to give rise the ear consciousness, there must be sound and ear, and also contact of these two. So sound and ear sensitivity, they coming together at present and paying attention, and that there is contact. At that moment, so ear consciousness arises due to the striking sound into the ear sensitivity. In the same way, smell to the nose sensitivity, the nose consciousness arises. And taste to the tongue sensitivity, the tongue consciousness arises. So the fifth one, the tangible objects. Tangible object strike to the body sensitivity, give rise the body consciousness. Then mental object and life continuum coming together, and mind consciousness element arise. So in this case, we have to understand 18 material phenomena. And the classification is 4 great essential Mahabhuta. They are the base of the 18 material phenomena. And the other 24 are derived material phenomena, Upadharupa. So here, Mahabhuta and Upadharupa. So Mahabhuta 4 and Upadharupa 24. Altogether 28. Here in this case, the Mahabhuta 4 is essential. So Upadharupa arise based on the Mahabhuta. We have to understand this nature of the material phenomena. Okay, so let's see to classify the visible object, 5 types of object, and then 5 types of sensitivity. So here, the sensitivity, eye sensitivity, ear sensitivity, nose sensitivity, tongue sensitivity, body sensitivity. They are 5 sensitive material phenomena. Okay, we understand these are 5 sensitive material phenomena, and also they are under the category of derived material phenomena. So we can say these 5 are called Upadharupa under the classification of Upadharupa, which is not very strong. So Mahabhuta are strong and it can be base, and Upadharupa, the derived material phenomena, can arise based on the great essential Mahabhuta. So on the other side, the objects, so visible object, sound, smell, and taste are also under the classification of derived material phenomena, which is called Upadharupa. So this, in the previous 4 pairs, so visible object is Upadharupa, derived material phenomena, materiality. And eye sensitivity also derived materiality. Both are Upadharupa. In the same way, in second pair, also both are Upadharupa. And that third pairs and the fourth pairs, all are Upadharupa. So the context of derived materiality, Upadharupa, to another derived materiality. So that contact is not strong. So not strong. The soft and weak, very weak. So for example, it is similar to the striking the cotton wool ball, striking to another cotton wool ball. So both are soft. So soft things, touching soft things, the contact is not very strong. That is why all of these 4 pairs are, the consciousness are accompanied by equanimity. It is mentioned in the Vibhavani and the other handbooks of the Abhidhamma teaching. So we are searching the accompanying feeling with the reason why. So the contact of Upadharupa to another Upadharupa is soft and weak. That is why the consciousness are accompanied by equanimity. Okay, so in case of the 5th pairs, tangible object. So the tangible object means the earth element, water element. Here there must be wind elements. So this must be wind elements. So earth element, wind elements, and fire elements. 3. So these 3, earth elements, Patavi Dhatu, and wind elements, or air element. Air elements is called the Vayu Dhatu, and fire elements, which is called Tejo Dhatu, except the exception is the water elements, is the Apo Dhatu. So three great essential materiality of the three elements are collectively called tangible object, Puttapa Ramana. So here the tangible object means the three great essential, or which is called the Mahabhuta. We have to understand this. This is different from the former four. So the former four are derived materiality. And the fifth one, the tangible object, is a great essential. So striking the tangible object to the body sensitivity. So body sensitivity is one of the upada rupa, derived materiality, which can be understood the soft materiality. So touching here, we can say this is heart. So heart to soft. It's similar to the striking the stone, striking the stone, contact of the stone to the cotton wool balls. So we can give the example of we hit a cotton wool ball by the stone, which is hard. So at that time, the stone, the speed of the force of the stone does not stop on the cotton wool balls. It continue to touch the background, the hard one in the background of the cotton, behind the cotton wool balls. So here in this case, the group of three elements hit to the body sensitivity, but it does not stop. It continues to hit the great essential behind the body sensitivity, because the derived materiality upada rupa arise based on the great essential materiality. So there must be the Mahabhuta or great essential behind the body sensitivity. So the impact, the force of the tangible objects continue to touch to the Mahabhuta behind the body sensitivity. So touching the stone into the stone wall like this. So it is hard. That is why in case of body consciousness, the accompanying feeling will be different from the previous four, the former four. So the body consciousness can be different. The accompanying feeling, you will see the one in the akusala vipaka, unwholesome resultant body consciousness, is accompanied by pain, and wholesome resultant consciousness, wholesome body consciousness in the wholesome resultant group is accompanied by the pleasurable feeling. So here, what I mentioned is to understand the accompanying feeling in the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, and body consciousness. So the former four are accompanied by the neutral feeling, but the fifth pairs of body consciousness are accompanied by, one is pain and the other is pleasurable feeling. Okay, so here you can see the associated feeling. The four sense faculty, the first four sense faculties are weak. So why is weak? I said I has already mentioned, because they are weak based on the context of the derived materiality to another derived materiality. So it's similar to the contact of the cotton wool balls to another cartoon ball. But the case of body consciousness, it is different. I mentioned that's why the group of great essential materiality impact to the another impact strike to the body sensitivity, which is included in the derived materiality, which can be considered as the soft, but it does not stop and touch to the background hardness. So it can be different in feeling, is the painful feeling and pleasurable feeling, dukkha and sukha. Okay, so let's continue about the feeling of the sampadichana. So sampadichana are the two types of receiving consciousness. One is in wholesome resultant and the other is in unwholesome resultant. So there are two types of receiving consciousness. Both are accompanied by neutral feeling, ubekha sahagata. We can ask why they are accompanied by neutral feeling, ubekha sahagata. The answer is because it is weak. Because it is weak. So we can ask why it is weak. It's different from the reason will be different from the previous 5 pairs or Dvipanja Vinyana. So the reason why it is weak is it is a condition. So it is conditioned to the consciousness. So according to the Patthana, so Anantara Pachaya and Samanantara Pachaya. So the previous one conditioned to the following one. In order to understand, we have to see the cognitive process. This is already mentioned in the lesson 9. Here, so receiving consciousness is represented with the RC, the keyword RC. So here, the receiving consciousness. So it is followed by the Ein, investigation consciousness. So according to the Patthana, the previous one conditioned to the following one. So receiving consciousness is conditioned for the investigation consciousness. Here it mentioned that different base. So different base. Okay. Being conditioned by the consciousness with the different base. Okay, let's see the receiving consciousness conditioned to the investigation consciousness, and also it is conditioned by the previous one. So according to the process, so we can see from the beginnings. So these 4 are bhavanga. All 4 are bhavanga. B also bhavanga. P past bhavanga. Here V birational bhavanga, and A is arrest bhavanga. So anyhow, these all are under the category of bhavanga. Okay, starting from this F, 5 dot abutting, then the mind take the new objects. So starting from the pi dot abutting consciousness, the mind take the new object here, because this is this is the Ein consciousness. So the object must be visible objects. So starting from the 5 dot abutting, the new visible object is taken as it is object. So the F 5 dot avoiding consciousness condition to Ein consciousness, and Ein consciousness condition to receiving consciousness, and receiving consciousness condition to investigation consciousness, and investigation consciousness to D or determining consciousness, and also in this way is condition, the previous one condition to the following one. So in this case, receiving consciousness is conditioned by the Ein consciousness. So in here, Ein consciousness, the base of Ein consciousness is eye sensitivity, because eye consciousness arises based on eye sensitivity. So here, the base is eye sensitivity. And receiving consciousness, the base of receiving consciousness is heart base. So they have a different. That's why receiving consciousness being conditioned by different base. Here, eye consciousness has the eye base, eye sensitivity as it is base, and receiving consciousness has heart base as it is base. So they have a different base. That is why we can say the receiving consciousness is weak, because it is conditioned by the unconsciousness, which has a different base. So that's why the Vibhavini say, because it is weak, being conditioned by the consciousness with different base. So this is just introduction. So you can say, because it is weak. It is weak. So the both receiving consciousness are accompanied by neutral feeling or equanimity. It is called the Upekha Sahagata. And the reason why it is weak is it is conditioned by unconsciousness, which has the different base. Okay. So in the same way, the Panchadwara Vachana. So here, two types of Vachana, Panchadwara Vachana and Manodwara Vachana. Both are accompanied by neutral feeling. Neutral feeling. So here also it is said because they are weak. But the reason why they are weak will be different. So Panchadwara Vachana, pipe door abiding consciousness, and Manodwara Vachana, mind door abiding consciousness. Okay, let's see one after another. For the five door abiding consciousness, there are three reasons to be weakened. So one is taking new objects. Taking new objects. So here, as I mentioned, that the five dot abiding Panchadwara Vachana just take the new object. Before that, the mind movements are Bhavanga. Bhavanga take the another object. And the five dot starting from the five dot abiding consciousness, the consciousness take new objects. That is why the five dot abiding consciousness take the new objects. Okay. So then what is the second reason to be weakened? Is just one time occurrence. Okay. For this also, unlike the Javana or registration, Javana or Dhararamana, they arise the Javana 7 times, registration 2 times. So the five dot abiding consciousness, Panchadwara Vachana, arise only one time. So one time occurrence cause it to be weakened, to be weak. And so the third reason is conditioning to the consciousness with the different base, conditioning two. So conditioning two it refers to the following one. Yeah, in this case, the Panchadwara Vachana, five dot abiding consciousness, it conditioned to the eye consciousness. So five dot abiding consciousness arises based on the heartbeats. So it has heartbeats as it is based when it arises. And eye consciousness has eye sensitivity as it is based. So the five dot abiding consciousness and eye consciousness have different base. So this also included one reason to be weakened. So we get three reasons. So we have to understand what it means. So conditioning to the consciousness mean the Panchadwara Vachana, five dot abiding consciousness, condition to the following one. The following one may be different from sometimes it can be the eye consciousness, sometimes it can be ear consciousness, but whatever the part consciousness have the different bases. So the pi dot abiding consciousness panchadwara vajana condition to the consciousness with the different base. That is why it is weak. So for three reasons it is weak, and because it is weak, it is accompanied by neutral feeling. Then for manodwara vajana, mind dot abiding consciousness, it is accompanied by neutral feeling for two reasons, because it is weak by two reasons. One is taking new objects. Okay, here let's see the process here, the process mind or process manodwara viti already mentioned in lesson 9. Here M represents the mind or abiding consciousness. So this is the first one, just arise after the bhavanga. So these all four categories are bhavanga. So this is a new, this is the first moment of consciousness which take new objects, mind or abiding. That's why this is weak. Mind or abiding consciousness is weak because it take new objects. That is why it is accompanied by equanimity. Then the second reason, only two reasons. The second reason is conditioning to the consciousness with different function. So here, the same as the third one in previous paragraph. So second one, conditioning to the consciousness with different function. So this also, you see the manodara vajana, mind or abiding consciousness, conditioned to the javana. So different function. So here in this case, we have to understand the function. Mind or abiding consciousness perform the function of abidance. So it introduces the new object because it just takes the new object. That is why that is the first moment to take the new object. That's why it's like a button. So it performs a button new object to the mind process. That is why it performs the button function, and it conditioned to the javana. Javana perform the javana function, which take the enjoyment or fully enjoyment or fully touching to the taste of the objects. So it is called the javana. It is the function of javana. So they have the different function. Manodara vajana and javana have different function. So because manodara vajana condition to the javana, so it conditioned to the consciousness with different function. It refers to the javana. That is why it is weak. It also weak. Due to it is weak, it is accompanied by neutral feeling. So this is the reason why manodara vajana are accompanied by neutral feeling. So it also, we can say that just one time occurrence, but the only in this is mind process. So mind door process, which is called the manodara viti, it occurs only one time here. But in another category of the manodara viti, mind door process, it can be 2 or 3 times and more. So we cannot include the second reason, one time occurrence in this case. So here we see in all process it occurs only one times, but in another category of mind or process manodara viti, there can be 2 types and 2 and more times. That is why we cannot say just one time occurrence in this case, because it can arise more than one times. So here second reason is not included for Manodara Vachana. Okay, now I have discussed about the rootless consciousness to understand more. So in lesson 8, we have already enumerated the 18 rootless consciousness in the group and in the different groups, given the 2 eye consciousness, 2 ear consciousness, etc. And also we classify into 89 consciousness into 7 groups like this. So uh, I think this is quite enough for the beginner level of the Abhidhamma study for 18 rootless consciousness. So I'm going to stop here my teaching for lesson 10, 18 rootless consciousness part 2. Sādhu. Let's make the aspiration and share a merit. Imina punya kamina
Imina punya kamena
mami bala samagamo
mame bala samagamo
tam samagamo hodu
satam samagamo hotu
yava nibbana patiya
yava nibbana patiya
idame punyam
idame punyam
asavakaya vahang hodu
asavakaya vaham hotu
idame punyam
idame punyam
nibbana sapachayo hodu
nibbana sapachayo hotu
mama punya bhagam
mama punya bhagam
sabba satanam bhajemi
sabha satanam bhajemi
te sabbe
te sabe
me samam
me samam
punya bhagam labandu
punya bhagam labantu.
sadhu sadhu
Sādhu, sādhu,
sadhu.
sādhu. Thank you, Bhante.